This is Endless Winter, set up for a solo game. There's a lot going on here, and there is a lot of things you can do with this game, but it's actually a very straightforward hybrid deck builder / worker placement game that I bet I can teach to you in less than 20 minutes. So this is Endless Winter, set up in all of its table hogging glory, and this particular game has been set up for a solo game. So you might see a few differences, like there being, all of the purple players' campsites already on the board and things like that. But that's all part of setup for the game. I'm not going to cover setup because it's pretty well explained in the rule book. There's a lot of steps to it, so I don't want to spend the whole video going through step by step how to place everything out. But this is essentially what it's going to look like. You have your main board here with your action spaces where you're going to send your workers. This is a worker placement game. You have your kind of market area here. You have this area here where you're going to be building monoliths, gaining the either points or what you place a monolith on. This is representative of the kind of land that you're in and the various terrains that you can set up your villages in. There's a not a monster track, an animal track where you can hunt animals, and then an idle track where you can move your way up, gaining some benefits along the way, but then mostly setting yourself up for end game scoring. So this is another one of the hybrid deck building / worker placement games, similar to Dune Imperium or Lost Ruins of Arnak. Now, let's just quickly cover kind of what those two mechanisms, what you usually see in games. So in a deck builder, you generally start with a hand of basic cards, and you're going to play out a certain number of cards on your turn. Those are going to gain you things like purchasing power for purchasing cards from the market. They may give you the ability to do something. In Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak, a lot of them gave you the ability to place your worker out. In other games like, say, Marvel Legendary, it gives you attack power to attack the bad guy. Generally, there is an opportunity to then purchase power or purchase cards to improve your deck, but also cull cards to remove them from your deck because they are, it makes your deck more efficient. But generally, once those cards are removed from your deck, they're just completely gone from the game. Also, most deck builders has a kind of standard hand size that you play out all of your cards, whether they're useful or not on your turn. You discard them, and then you draw up a new hand of, say, 5 cards. Standard worker placement games is you place a worker, you get to take a single action where that worker is placed, and that usually blocks off that space from everyone else. Now, let's talk about how Endless Winter flips all of that on its head. First, let's talk about deck building. When you are deck building, you are still purchasing cards to improve the efficiency of your deck. But you have two types of cards. You have your cultural cards, which are down here. These are played essentially usually one per turn, played at the beginning. You take that action, and then you're just kind of done with them. And then you have your multi-use cards here that you may play on your turn because they're going to give you things like labor and benefits if you go to specific actions, or you may save them for what's called the eclipse phase, which is very different, but kind of similar to Dune Imperium's kind of battle phase. So you're still increasing the efficiency of your deck by purchasing cards, but when you cull cards in this game, you're actually burying them. Think of this as like generations going by. Elders are getting older, they eventually die off. You're burying these cards, and you're going to get points for not only the cards that you've buried if they have a point value on them, but also how many cards you have buried and where you are on the idle track. So you want to cull cards, and culling them does not necessarily mean you lose those points that they might offer you. Also, there is no hand size limit in this game, so you can hold on to any number of cards you want for the next round. You may even draw cards throughout your turn or during the eclipse phase, but then at the end of the eclipse phase, when you're preparing for the next round, you are going to draw back up 5 more cards no matter what is in your hand. So you could have a hand size of 7, of 10, 10 plus. Depending on how much card drawing you did, you're still going to draw 5, and so your hand limit could be huge. And generally in this game, as you get into like the second, third, and fourth rounds, you will have large hand sizes because that hand size is, or that hand is yours throughout essentially 3 turns within a round. So again, that's a little different. Also, generally in worker placement, when you go somewhere, you take a single action and you block off that spot. Here, if you are the first person to go to, there's only 4 spaces to send a worker on this main board. If you're the first person to go there, you get this bonus action, and that's actually the only thing you cut off from anyone else. Everyone else can still send people there, they just don't have access to the bonus at the bottom, but then you can take the actions that are at the top next to the light blue here as many times as you can afford, and then you can take the action that's next to the darker teal 1 time. And again, if you're the first to go there, you also gain this bonus that you can use at any point throughout your turn. There's one other spot you can send a worker, and that's simply you place them onto your player board here to rest. And resting is not just giving up on that player's turn. There's actually a lot you can do when you rest. You can draw a card. You can essentially, kill an animal to gain, the food and the hide and stuff from it, resources. It's also going to give you labor for your eclipse phase, which we'll talk about here in a second. And if you play with the rest tokens module, you may also, if you're the first person to rest, similar to first person gaining bonuses here, get whatever bonuses on this token. All right. That is a brief overview of the game. This is a, kind of typical point scoring competition. So you are trying to amass the most points. You're going to track those points going around the outer edge of this board. If you make it around here, you can flip over your token to 100, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. So on your turn, when it is your turn at the beginning of said round, and there's only 4 rounds in the game, let's talk about what you can do. The first thing you can do on your turn is play one of your culture cards. So here's just 2 examples. These are my starting culture cards for the green tribe, the wolf tribe. I could choose one of these and play it. At the beginning, in this instance, I could spend a meat to basically gain one of these tribes cards and put it into my discard pile as opposed to my hand. Or if I played this one, I could spend a single tool to place out a monolith token. You can play more than one at the beginning of your turn if you choose to, but by doing so, you would have to discard a card out of your hand. You would not gain any benefit from that card the rest of your turn, and that card has been discarded. So generally, people just play one. After you have played your chosen culture card, and that one is optional, you're going to decide where you want to place your figure. Now, you have just 3 workers, 2 regular workers, and your chief, which is represented by a miniature. All right. Now, wherever you decide to go, that is going to determine the actions you get to take. And it doesn't matter who you send first. You can always send your chief first. You can always send these guys out first. Your chief, however, since they're big and bad, do get a bonus, and generally it's associated with a specific location. So Chief Firewolf here, if he goes over here to the Navigator Explorer column, he gains 2 meat just by going there. But I could save him for the end. I could send him right now, make sure I get that bonus and his bonus. It's entirely up to me, but I only have 3 workers that I can send out. I'm not going to gain any more. I'm not going to lose any or anything like that. But you're going to choose a worker, put them out. If you're the first person to go there, you can place them on that action, which means you get it and no one else can. And then you're going to play cards out of your hand, not culture cards. Culture cards have these little canvas hides on them, but you're going to play out all the other cards you might have in your hand, and you're going to spend some of them just for labor. These basic cards here only have 1 labor. Sometimes you will spend them for benefits, like here, this tribeswoman can turn meat into tools if you play her on that turn. Or Once you start having these guys in your hand, you'll see that they give you various benefits as well. Most of them give you labor for going to a specific site. The shaman here can, if you spend a tool, give you extra labor, so on and so forth. So you're mainly playing them for the labor and possibly the additional bonus on the bottom. Now, when you're looking at one of these cards, you're only paying attention to this labor, and if you play them during the action, your phase during your turn, you only look at this one. This bottom part here, you only pay attention to if you hold on to them and then play them during the eclipse phase. And this is a stagnant market. These are just piles of all the same cards. So these are the 5 tribes cards you can choose from at any given time. This row here is not going to change unless you run out of a pile, and then that pile is done. So you're going to play your cards out. You're going to gain benefits plus labor, and you're going to use that labor, also the tools and the food you have you're tracking on your player board, to take these various actions. Okay? At the end of your turn, you're going to, or at the end of your turn, you're going to discard the cards that you played. So that could include a culture card. And then plays is going to pass around. When it comes back around to you, you're going to place your next worker. All right, you're going to possibly have played a culture card at the beginning. You're going to play some more cards to use the resources on your board to take those actions. Again, if somebody beats you to a spot and you want to use that spot, you can still go there. You just don't get this bonus action. And then last but not least, when it comes back around to you for the 3rd time, you would send out your 3rd worker, whether that be chieftain or not. You can always send them here to rest, or you can send them else somewhere out here to do the other stuff. All right, that's the basis of your turn, is placing a worker, playing cards, and then using the resources you've just acquired from the cards and from your board to take those actions. If it's your 3rd turn, all right, so you have placed out all of your workers, you then, after you discard cards, so say we played these guys here, and we even rested a guy here, then you can play cards specifically for the eclipse phase. So you can play these guys down, all right, and in a multiplayer game, you would play them face down because you don't want anybody else to see. All right, but what you're doing, first of all, is trying to have the most strength in the eclipse phase. So here I would have 1, 2.5. I'm not playing this during the eclipse, or I'm playing this during the eclipse phase, so I ignore this top part. I'm going to get a tool from her during the eclipse phase, but that's it. So tribesman cards give you nothing during the eclipse phase, and culture cards give you nothing. But you could throw in some culture cards if you wanted to bluff the other players into thinking you've laid down 4 cards for the culture phase, but you'll get them back. You don't have to play them. During the eclipse phase, the first thing you do is determine who is the winner of the eclipse phase, and who's second and who's third, and you rearrange the turn order track at the beginning of the eclipse phase based on who has the most strength and going down from there. All right, then you're going to gain bonuses, eclipse phase bonuses, based on where you are on the turn order track, the icons down here at the bottom of your cards that you played. Also, as you unlock, as you put down sacred stones on your board, or as you take away and build villages and take them off the board, this is going to reveal or put down opportunities to score points and gain things during the eclipse phase. You'll also look at where you are territory-wise, and if you have the most influence in a particular area, you will gain that benefit as well. So lots can happen during the eclipse phase. Once you have finished an eclipse phase and everybody has had their turn, you're going to discard your cards. You're going to, this is when and only when you would say refill the market here of culture cards. You would refill the animal board, and you're going to move your, we would have moved on to here for the eclipse phase, but then we move into round 2, all right, with a new player turn order. So let's take a closer look at this board and talk about what these actions can do for us. This first spot here is essentially for gaining new workers. which tribes cards, which is up here. So if you go here, the first option you have, and you can do an infinite number of times, is spend 1 tool and 1 labor to gain a unique worker, and that's actually going to go directly into your hand. But if you do this more than once, you can't say take 3 shamans. You would have to take a shaman, an elder, and a crafter. All right, so the most you could do is 5. You can't do it an infinite number of times because each one has to be different. Then you can choose 1 time to spend a meat to pick up a person and put them into your discard pile, but also then bury a card. So this is when you're going to cull cards from either cards that you've played, cards in your hand, or cards in your discard pile. You can stick them under your burial card, and again, you'll get points for those at the end of the game. It also is a great way to cull your deck, so a great way for you to say get rid of your like tribesman cards, which aren't nearly as effective as the other ones. If you're the first person to go here, you get to move up on either idle track, and you get to bury a card. Here in the second one, this is where you're going to gain your culture cards and your sacred stones. So if you go here, you can spend 3 labor to get 1 culture card from the display. And you can do this as many times as you want, but 3 labor is expensive. So maybe twice if you have a ton of labor in your hand. Again, cards that you acquire go directly into your hand. Unless you see this symbol that looks like the card has been torn in 2, it always goes into your hand. This symbol is what tells you something's going into your discard pile. You can 1 time spend the required number of meat and tools, that's why there's a question mark here, to gain a sacred stone, which is up here. Now, the requirement here is listed on your board. There's 3 cutouts on your board that shows the first one would cost 1 tool and 1 meat. You also get to bury a card. The second one's going to cost you 1 tool, 2 meat, and you get to gain a person to your discard pile. Third one's going to cost you 1 tool, 3 meat, and gain a person to your hand. These first 4 sacred stones are available at the beginning of the game, and until you move on to Era 2, these last 4 are not available. But in rounds 3 and 4, your Era 2 and Era 1 sacred stones are available. Also, all of these culture cards are going to be upgraded to Era 2 culture cards in rounds 3 and 4. So keep that in mind. All right, and if you go here as a bonus, you simply get a stone and a food. I mean, a tool and a food. And you can gain this bonus before, say, purchasing your sacred stone. All right. If you go here, this is where you're primarily going to be putting down camps, moving those camps, and establishing your villages. So an infinite number of times you can spend tools to place down a village, and you always place it in the middle on this starting space first. And you can spend any number of labor to move that campsite. And you can move on to the glaciers. You could move one, you could spend 2 labor and move it twice. Okay? Once you have kind of set up your campsites, what you're hoping to do is set up 3 campsites in this kind of triangle pattern. Because if you have this set up, your next action that you can do just once is to spend 3 food, pick up these 3 campsites, and put down a village instead in the middle. All right, these go back onto your board like so, which means as you take campsites off, you actually increase your availability to gain food, but as you cover them back up, you lose that food. But this village now has influence on 1, 2, 3 tiles, and it counts as 2 influence on each one. So a single village would trump a single campsite in this instance. And remember, whoever has the most influence on a particular spot gains the benefit of that spot during the eclipse phase. All right. And if you go here as a bonus, you can place a camp and move one spot for free. That's the bonus there. I'm going to put these back over there because that's just how the game was set up. All right, and then last but not least is essentially the hunting action. This one, when you go here, you can spend any amount of labor to flip new cards up onto the animal board. Normally there's only 1 card per player plus 1. So if you want it, and that does not get refilled until the end of a round. So if you wanted to see some animals, you could spend labor to flip some out and reveal them. You can also then spend a labor and a tool to take one. And what you're looking for with the animals is sets. So you can see here this stag moose. If I have just one stag moose, I get 1 point. But if I have 2 of them at the end of the game, I get 3. 3 equals 6, and 4 plus equals 10. Most of them, they don't benefit anything from having more than 4. So you're looking to diversify your animals, but then collect sets. That Argentivus there is a wild animal and can count as any of them. If, however, I ever kind of kill this animal to gain the benefit, in this case, I would be able to place a camp and gain 4 food. They do not count. Tipped animals do not count as towards your set collection. Last thing here, which you can do once, is tip an animal to gain the resources listed. And if you go here as a bonus, you get 1 animal card for free off the top of the deck. So you don't know what it's going to be. You get that one, you add it to your set. Bingo, bango, you are done. All right. So those are the 4 actions that you can take. Again, if you're the first person to go there, you get that bonus action. Otherwise, you just get to do these top ones. If you don't like any of the actions up there, you can always rest. Again, rest allows you to draw a card, tip an animal card, and then during the eclipse phase, you get a bonus 1.5 labor. All right. Now, there's a few other actions here that you're going to be taking throughout the game that are not specifically involved with these here, and that's mainly your megalith board, and we'll talk briefly about the idle board. So there's going to be certain times where you're going to gain the opportunities to place a megalith, and that's going to be these tokens, starting with 2 gray, and then the rest in your player color. Place them on this board, and this board can change shape. It's actually made up of 4 tiles, and they have setups in the rule book of all the different shapes you can make. But if you have the opportunity to place a megalith, which you can see if you're the first player during the eclipse phase, you get to place a megalith, and again, you might get that placement from a culture card. You might get that placement during an eclipse phase action, like having influence here. Various effects are going to give you that ability. These 4 spaces here with the red arrow have to house a gray neutral megalith tile or token. But their benefit in placing them allows you to place another one adjacent to it. So anytime you are placing a megalith tile, you have to place it adjacent to one that's already been placed, unless it is a gray tile going on one of these starting spaces. And again, the bonus for placing one on a starting space is the ability to immediately place another one. Also, when looking at your board here, you have to place your tiles from left to right. So I have to get rid of my gray ones before I can start picking off these, and I have to then take this pile, then this pile, then this pile, and so forth. As I remove these, it's going to give me bonuses that I gained during the eclipse phase, but as I place them, other than the gray ones here, the neutral ones, whatever you place on top of whatever you cover up, you gain that. So here I would gain 2 tools. Here I would get to draw 2 cards. Here I get to move up 2 idle spaces on the idle track and bury 1 card. Here I get 2 food. Here I get to reveal and then choose an animal card. So depending on what you're looking for, it depends on which direction, and as you get further away from the centers, the benefits generally get better. As the game goes on, you're going to have the opportunity, say you have this set up here, and we'll do this too, you're going to have the opportunity to stack your megaliths and go higher and higher and higher. Now, whenever you do this, instead of gaining a benefit that's listed on the tile underneath, you're gaining points, pure points that you're going to track right then and there. Anytime you lay down a monolith, you are going to gain 1 point for yours or a neutral tile, and 2 points if you're covering up somebody else's tile, but you're also going to give them a point. All right. So if I went here, I would gain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by placing on top of this. I would also give the purple player 2 points. And if I go here, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm not giving anybody any points. That is essentially your megalith action. Some of the sacred stones score VP, or not VP, but yes, they score VP during the game, during the eclipse phase, based on how many tiles you might have out on the board and or how many you have stacked up on top of other tiles. Last but not least, here we talked about the idols. There are 2 tracks here to the left and right of this bird head here. As you push your way up here, you are simply trying to be the highest on the right track, because whoever's highest is going to get the most benefit for their buried cards. So if you're the highest, you get to follow this, and so you're hoping to have 7+ buried cards, and then you get 15 points. If you're second, you follow this one, and everybody else follows this last one. This one does not matter who's in the lead. So on this side, as you move up the board, if you're the first person to hit a row, you want to push your token all the way to the left, because if you're tied like this, whoever's highest and left, most left, is in first. So if this person then took an action and jumped them, they're now in first place and purple's in second. As you move up this track, you're trying to get within these white boundaries here. So here's the 4 boundary, here's the 3 boundary, here's the 2, and the 1's at the very top. Wherever you end up at the end of the game, you can then trade in leftover resources, tools, and meat for victory points. So if you're down here, every 4 tools and meat combined gets you 1 point. So you can see as you move your way up, here every 2 tools and meat gets you 1 point. So it's a better ratio. Also, anytime you hit one of these rows, you gain this benefit listed. Over here, you would gain instant points listed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it. Like I said, there's a lot going on here. It's a table hog of a game. There's all these boards that you got to keep up with, but it's actually pretty straightforward. It's a very, very tight worker placement game, with there only being 3 workers and essentially 4 spots to place. Your deck is not going to get huge, and you're going to see most of your cards several times. Actually, you're probably going to see most of your cards every round that you're going to play. So deciding what cards you add to your hand is very important. Personally, I feel like where you go and going early to get your villages is the key to success, but some people go after those animal matches. Some people really go hard after the idol board. Some people really go hard after the megalith. So there's so many different paths to gaining points, but I will tell you right off the bat, you cannot just focus on 1 or 2. You kind of have to diversify a little bit. So are you going for the idle track? You also may want to go for animals. Are you going for campsites and villages? You may also want to go for megaliths. So keep that in mind, that you cannot focus solely on one faction of this game. You want to diversify in order to be successful. So now that we've covered all of how to play Endless Winter, if you are interested in learning how to play solo, stick around. If not, feel free to stop the video now, because everything for the remainder of the time is how to manage the AI. So, like I said, there's some specific setup for the AI, and they basically get to start with all of their camps out. They don't need any cards. They will gain culture cards, but they're only going to ever gain them into a face-down pile, and then they use these cards to bury. All right? So, on AI's turn, when it's the AI's turn, you're going to take this deck of 16 cards, and you're going to flip one over. All right? And you're going to look here to see where they want to go. In this instance, they want to go in this first area to gain, where normally you would gain tribesmen, but they're going to take their own unique actions when they go here. Now, the trick is, however, is that the AI loves their bonuses. So they're only going to go here if they can steal and claim the bonus, or cover it up, because they're actually not claiming it. If I had already gone here, because say I was first player, they're going to then look to this tie-breaking arrow. In this case, they're going to go to the left and find the first available spot that they could cover up the bonus on. In this case, it would be right here. If, however, all of these, it's near the end of the round, and they're going to say place their chief, and all of them are filled up, there's no bonuses to cover up, they'll just stick with this one and go right here. The AI does not ever take the rest action. Okay? They always go onto the board. It doesn't matter where they go onto the board. They're going to do wherever their little worker ended up, they're going to take the actions in that column. So since they went to this location, they're going to go in the same column as this fella here. So in this instance, they would place a megalith. There is instructions on how to determine where they're going to play, but a lot of it has to do with this tiebreaker arrow. And they're going to bury a card, which just means they take the top card of their face down culture card deck and bury it. Because they're going to score for these points buried, and they're going to score only for these culture cards at the end of the game. On their next turn, you're going to take the next card, you're going to flip it over, and you're going to leave the bottom row exposed. Here in this instance, they would try and go hunting. Okay? And then they would do these 1, 2, 3 actions. So their actions grow, their opportunity to take actions and the actions they take increase as the round goes on. But let's say, for example, that I had already gone here, and they have the opportunity to go somewhere else because there's 2 unclaimed board or spots out there. They would follow the arrow, so they're going to go to the right, so they would wrap around, and they would go here. Even though the little worker is here, they're going to take the actions in this column here. So in this case, they would take a culture card, they would look to the right and then up based on the tiebreaker. They would gain a random monster off the top of the monster pile, and they would then take an eclipse card, which just means taking one of their cards, the next one on top of the pile, and putting it in a face down pile for the eclipse phase. This is them kind of bluffing or setting up their amount of labor that they're trying to win the eclipse phase with. For you, you only do it at the end of your 3 worker placement turns. They will do it throughout. Okay. Then last but not least, you're going to take a third one, place it down here, look to see where they can go. In this case, I probably would have already gone here. And so they're going to just then stick here, go here, and they do 1, 2, 3, 4 actions in this column because that's where they placed their worker. All right. So they would do monolith, bury, monolith, or megalith, bury. All right. Here, this action here, which represents this, is when they're going to place out either move campsites or place villages. If they ever do have a triangle set up like I discussed, they will place one of their villages down. If not, they're going to flip over a card like this. This is their starting card, so let's say this is the new one. They're going to move their interior camps to match that. So in this case, they're actually now setting themselves up that unless I swoop in there and steal those spots from them, the next time they gain that action, they will be placing out villages. Okay, all of the actions, symbols that you're going to see on an AI card are very well explained in the solo-specific rulebook. Then during the eclipse phase, you're going to take any cards that they would have stacked over here, flip them over, and you're going to count. So this would be a half. He's getting a half here. So he would have 1. Compare it against yours and rearrange the order track as necessary. Then they're going to gain whatever benefit is listed next to their order track. They're going to gain any benefits they have influence on over here. They're going to gain eclipse benefits from their board. Since they didn't play cards like we do, they don't have any cards that are going to give them eclipse bonuses. But other than that, you're pretty much giving them exactly what you would. If, however, since, say, example, they don't have a deck of cards to draw, if they were here and tried to take that action, you always have this reference card here that tells you, all right, if they can't draw a card, they bury a card instead. If they can't, well, since they wouldn't take a tribe card, they're going to gain a tool instead. And if for some reason they've already, say, put out their megaliths and they can't place a megalith out, then they're going to work their way down. So then they would bury a card. If they can't bury a card, they would gain a tool. If they can't gain a tool, they would gain a meat. If they can't gain a meat, they'd push up on the idle track. So this is a very important, just kind of tiebreaker card. And that is it for the AI. They're going to score points the same way you do at the end of the game. They're going to score based on their idle track. They're going to score based on their buried cards. And they're going to score for leftover meat and tool resources. Same thing as you. They're going to score for the culture cards that they've got tucked under here. You're going to count all of your cards in your hand, deck, discard pile, and under your burial card. This AI system is very smooth, very unique in this whole stacking and using the actions from previous cards so that their actions get bigger as the round goes on. There's also a hard mode where you actually start with a card down at the beginning of the round, and so the first time you place a card, their first worker placement actually gets 3 actions, and then they're going to get 4 actions, and then they get 5 actions. So that's essentially how you play hard mode. Pretty straightforward though. But that is it. It's so fluid once you understand what those symbols do and can just quickly pop them off and run down the list and do their actions. Boom, boom, boom. Beautiful. The only thing the AI has to pay for in placing stuff out are to gain a sacred stone. They have to pay for it with the stone or the tools and the meat. So if, say, example, and this happens often, they may only have 2 tools but don't have any meat, and their benefit says to gain a sacred stone, they can't. They don't have what it takes, so in that case, they build a megalith. That's the only thing they have to pay for. Other than that, they follow pretty standard AI rules that they get everything for free. They don't deal with a deck of cards or a hand of cards or a discard pile. They only have this face-down culture deck. Anytime they gain cards from the culture display, using the tiebreaker, it just goes face down onto here. So that's probably going to be the next card they bury. And you're giving them a stack during setup. That is it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. This is a very quick game for playing solo, especially once you've gotten used to those actions and the symbols that they represent. You can easily knock out a solo game of Endless Winter in 45 minutes once you know what you're doing. So production value in just the retail version is really nice. This is the retail version that you're looking at, so you're still getting miniatures, you're still getting some screen printed wooden tiles, glass cubes, things like that. So very nice production value. Really enjoying this one. If you are a fan of that hybrid worker placement / deck builder, you can't go wrong with this one. Or if you're looking for something that's just kind of a unique theme, there's not a lot of caveman culture building games out there. So I guess there's like Stone Age and Caverna Cave Farmers, but that's about it. All right, that's going to do it. Once again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.